Welcome to the Pursuit of Progress podcast, where we explore real estate, self-improvement, and how to get better every single day. I'm Adam, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ben, and today we're going to be diving into a topic that transforms my personal relationship, and I'm hoping that it can also help you in every aspect of life. This is all about the 5 love languages. Stick around as we break down how understanding these different love languages isn't just for couples. It's a game changer for friendships, leadership, and even business success. Really excited for this episode today. And as always, Ben, welcome. How are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to be here as always, and I love discussing topics like that, like this, because they're focused around communication. And if you would have asked me when I was younger, talking about the 5 love languages and how important they are, I probably just would have dismissed that. As you get older, the more relationships you have, the deeper friendships that you realize how important this is. So I think it's really exciting and very valuable. Hopefully I'll learn some things, but more importantly for the audience.
I hadn't read it up until probably about 6 months ago. And, I think everybody and if you have any sort of personal relationship, whether it be family, significant other, whoever it may be, but I think everybody has different times where maybe they're struggling a little bit. They're just not firing on the same cylinder. They're just not totally aligned. And just to be a little bit vulnerable with you guys today, my girlfriend and I had a little bit of that a few months back, and I had talked to I have a therapist that I talk to every once in a while, and this was like one of his very first recommendations was just, hey, have you guys read the 5 love languages? And neither of us had, and it was just this crazy like light bulb moment where it's a pretty simple, easy read. Read it in a couple of days, and as soon as I did, and then kind of had a follow up, just where both my girlfriend and I kind of talked through each of our love languages, and just kind of, it seems so simple and basic, but it really opened up both of our minds a little bit. And it was crazy just how quickly and how dramatically it really improved and helped us. So hopefully some of you guys, if you haven't really read it before or aren't that familiar with it, this can give you guys some value today too.
And tell me if you would agree with this. The fact that you took the time, got some advice, you took the suggestion of reading this book. Don't you feel like now that you've learned this, you are so better prepared and you know how to like put some of this stuff in action, and it's actually like you're understanding one another even better just from reading this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not just for a romantic relationship. That's why I thought it was a good topic to cover on our podcast, is because what I've done since reading the book and since seeing the value it's provided our personal intimate relationship, just starting to apply some of the same idea to business relationships, friendships, my family, just other people that are important to me in life. It really does help just connect with them better and understand how to show your appreciation for them, and just, I don't know, have a more deep, meaningful relationship with everybody that you want to in life.
And before we get into the five love languages and really break those down, what would you say, like, why is this so important, and what advice would you give to others as far as why it's so important to learn this?
So in the book, they have quite a few stories of real life case studies, examples where this had dramatically helped them. And it was just a common theme with many of these relationships is either the husband or wife or both of them would just talk about how, they've been married for 25 years, they love the person, but there's just something missing, that spark has faded, or they just weren't in that same deep connection that they maybe once were. And it's just funny how like all these different, stories that they share made me start thinking about, my personal past relationships and how this probably could have improved a lot of those as well. Just understanding a little bit more about what, gets people, excited or appreciating just the love that you're providing them. And I don't know how else to say it other than it's such a simple concept. But it took me just kind of sitting down and just really diving deeper into it and just giving it that time just to read through the book and really understand all 5 of these. It's just crazy how effective it was in my personal life.
Yeah, what's interesting is that it's given me a higher sense of awareness on what my love languages are. But then looking back over the years, I'm also able to reflect back and like understand like what my parents were and like what other people are with their love languages. My dad loved giving gifts. And that's how he expressed his love, is that he would buy things and give gifts for others. And my mom was different. And so once you have an awareness of what these are, you kind of understand why people treat you or why they express their love in a certain way. So yeah, it's interesting to reflect back on.
And just before we kind of dive into the five and explain each of these to you guys, when I first, was recommended this book, I actually also did an online kind of like a litmus test where you just go online, it's free. There's, they try and upsell you to a more comprehensive report, but it just has you answer maybe 20 questions or so, just different scenarios. And then that actually kind of at the end spits out, at least one, if not a couple love languages. And what this is doing is it's giving you what your love languages are. So what you get value from, or how you most like to be shown love. What's important is just kind of clarifying that, because when you guys start to hear these five, it might confuse you and you might not even be sure which one of these you are. And that's how I kind of was. And I think just doing this test, that really helps, just the way they phrase the questions, and at least, give you a little bit more clarity on some of this. And you can have more than one. I think Ben and I were both talking about this right before we started tonight. And I think we both, probably have two each. Some people might even have three. Some people are maybe only one. So it really can vary. But just wanted to start off by just letting you guys know there is also this test you can do online for free. I'll put a link in the show notes, but I recommend you guys also do that if you decide to read the book.
And do you think someone's love languages can change over the years?
Definitely. I would actually put myself in that bucket. I think when I was like in my 20s, I was probably a little bit more on like physical touch, which we'll get into. Yeah, I still think, all five of these are important, but not maybe at that same level it was when I was younger. So yeah, definitely, I think it can change over time.
Okay. All right, well, let's jump right in. What are the five love languages? Let's hear it.
All right, guys. So I'll just kind of run through all five of these, and then Ben and I can just kind of talk through some more personal stories and just kind of some practical tips on how you might be able to apply this. So the first one is words of affirmation. So words of affirmation are verbal signs of love for your significant other. This could be compliments, encouragement, appreciation. Words of affirmation also, I think, are really important to clarify that this could be vocal, meaning you're speaking this to the other person, but also written down. So, you could write down some words of affirmation and provide that to somebody in a card or whatever it may be. But
like a thoughtful note, or a little like "I love you" or "thinking of you."
Yep. And that can kind of then blend into another one of these, which is receiving gifts. But I think if it's more of just the words that are being used for affirmation or for the showing of love, I think that's the key there. So again, words of affirmation is the first one. The second one is quality time. So quality time, as it's pretty simple to understand, it's just focused attention and meaningful interaction. The two people sitting on the couch next to each other watching a movie, that's not really quality time compared with, maybe sitting across from each other and playing cards and talking, or, doing a puzzle or board game, or, maybe just going out for a walk, but being somewhat engaged with each other, not just kind of coexisting next to one another. This is another thing they talked about in the book, was just a lot of relationships, they might just be with each other a lot, but, it's not that intentional quality time. We'll go into that in a little bit more depth here in a minute. So that's number two. Number three, acts of service. So these are just actions that help or support the other person. Number four, physical touch, nonverbal affection, like a hug or a handshake, or obviously something more than that. And then last but not least is number five, receiving gifts. So just thoughtful gestures that are showing appreciation for the partner. So again, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, physical touch, and receiving gifts.
Yeah. You're right. Such a simple list, but maybe a little bit more difficult to implement at times if you aren't aware of how important this stuff is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So again, you guys, I think the biggest thing is first doing a test, or just, looking inward on yourself to really figure out what you are, which couple of these you are. And then what's fun to do is have your partner do the same thing, and then try and guess, what your partner's top two, love languages are. And, even if you've been with the other person for a long time, a lot of times you might be surprised, maybe you thought it was one thing and it actually ended up being something completely different. And in that case, which kind of the glass half full optimistic perspective on this, that's great. That just means that you now have this opportunity to really showcase your love in the correct way and just see how much of a difference that makes.
Yeah, and it's also an opportunity to where if your partner receives love a certain way, but maybe that's not how you receive love. It's a way to kind of develop and grow that skill to learn how to, show that person love in a different way, maybe in a way that you've never experienced before.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just not to put, the male and female into two kind of stereotypical buckets, but, a lot of women are really keen on the quality time and words of affirmation. Men kind of tend to focus more on the physical touch, maybe receiving gifts, acts of service. But the physical touch one is one that I think was interesting to me when I read the book, is how, that's actually one of the lowest for most women and it's one of the highest for most men. And that would be an example of what you're talking about, where, you know, the two people that are, together, they don't have to have the same love languages. They just have to understand what the others are.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
that's great.
And then I'll also just want to share that, we wanted to bring this up today for, anybody that might be in a relationship that is, everybody always can have a more fulfilling, deeper relationship. And I think that's something always to be striving for throughout any relationship, every month, every year, just always becoming a deeper, more intimate relationship with that person. And this is just a great way to really push each other to get to that place. But it's not just for romantic, intimate relationships. Like I said earlier, I think understanding this from a managerial leadership type position is huge. You think about, like, I had a lot of employees in my previous kind of business venture, and I had always, looked at, like the quality time, receiving gifts, where I would take them all out to concerts and do like fun activities with my staff. And I did not probably do enough of the words of affirmation, which is just showing, through words, just that you really appreciate, the hard work that they're putting in, for example. And that's one that I think a lot of businesses and leaders and, managers always are, oh, well, we're just going to give them a bonus. We're just, it's money is always the thought at first of what's the most important to employees. But it's just crazy how that's actually not the case in most scenarios. It's actually the words of affirmation, or just that public acknowledgement or public praise is an example of this, how it could be applied to like a business rather than a romantic relationship.
Yeah, and as a leader, I would say that it gives your words more meaning and more power when you're able to really connect and identify with those that you're leading. And so your approach might be different, but it gives you more influence, more power, and allows you to create a better connection.
And there's a lot of other theories behind this when it comes to just like business negotiation and sales and influence. And I think this maybe is not as high on that list as, for example, like I'm going to say this name wrong, the Enneagram. There's other, different tests you can do out there just to figure out, what type of personality you are. And a lot of this, though, really can be applied to business and not just personal relationships.
There's also the spirit animal.
Spirit animal. Yep. You got to
Have you
have
ever
your
done that?
spirit
I mean,
animal.
there actually is a totem spirit animal test, and these animals have different meaning. And it sounds kind of funny to think about, but you have your spirit animal, and it gives the characteristics of what that means and what that spirit animal represents. So it just same thing. It's like it's interesting to read about. So
I would put you as a road runner for
that's
many
good.
reasons, but mainly just the level of energy you have and your speed. And, with that being said, leading me into today's sponsor for the episode. So if you are at all a property owner in the Tucson, Arizona area, and if you're looking for hassle-free property management, Roadrunner Property Care takes care of everything. We're talking routine maintenance, security checks, guest management, you name it, they do it. Visit roadrunnerpropertycare.com to learn more. It's your property, but it's their priority. Once again, that's Roadrunner Property Care.
I love that. And you get better at saying that every single time. You're a professional voiceover is what it sounds like. And thank you so much to our sponsors too, by the way.
Well, I think we've got some very very strong sponsors, and we're looking for some more. So if anybody wants to reach out and chat about that, let us know. But moving on, let's talk now about again these five love languages and how we want to apply them to business and leadership. So we've already talked a little bit about this, but I want to go a little bit deeper. I spoke about my experience with my employees and understanding how sometimes just like public praise, words of affirmation can do so much, especially for just your team culture, when most businesses and leaders get it wrong and think it's only about the money, about that financial or that receiving a gift, that gift of money.
Yeah.
And it just really is surprising how far just a public, in front of their peers, public praise, how important that is to a lot of people.
It is, yeah. And that reminds me, this was a phrase that I heard maybe 10 years ago in a leadership seminar. We've all heard of the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. But then I had never heard this at the time. Maybe you have. There's also the platinum rule, which is treat others how they want to be treated. And so I think that perfectly describes what you're sharing right now, really being able to identify, connect, and treat others, whether it's your spouse, your partner, your employees, how they want to be treated.
I had not heard of that. The platinum rule.
That's right. We're
So
going platinum.
going platinum, baby. So we talked about employees, but also want to just now shift to clients, customers. It
Yeah.
goes the exact same thing for them, and the example I use for this is rather than it only being about money, thinking that you need to have a lower cost for your service, or if you're maybe a brick and mortar retail business, you think it's only about just reducing the cost of a product you're selling. When in reality, again, it can be a lot of other things that customer takes as the most important. And, a lot of times it could just be even that value that you're providing through, maybe a second product for half off, or maybe you're even throwing something in as a bonus for free. That would be an example of like receiving a gift, which could be just as, if not more important than it having a lower price tag on that item. So just thinking through that,
Mhm.
it could be different for everybody depending on what type of business you're in or just, what's going on there. But it's not just for employees. It can also definitely be related to customers.
Yeah, and I think also with customers, communication would fall under that. Would you like me to call you? Are you okay with text message? Are you okay with email? Do you want to meet face to face? And some of that goes in line with some of these other love languages, being able to see someone face to face and shake their hand. I have customers that I'll work with exclusively, almost exclusively over text. And I'll have other customers that want to talk over the phone. And I have some customers still. Actually, I spoke to someone today. He's like, I don't do business over text. I don't do it over email. I don't even do it over the phone. I'm gonna have to meet you. I'm gonna have to and I was like, okay.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's not a good one. We're spoiled in our day and age today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I
Well, let's
had
continue.
Yeah, so I was also just going to share that, you're not necessarily with customers going to be able to figure this out, especially if you're not interacting with them on a very
Mhm.
frequent basis, or, you're not going to maybe point blank ask them, hey, by the way, what's your love language? There's going to be times where in a business to customer relationship, you're not going to be able to know. So what I was going to share on that is, having all five of these in the back of your mind and trying to apply each of them in some way during the time that you're with them as a client, as that, for example, I'm using it as my real estate. So as an example, I've had clients in the past 6 months. I had one specifically where, over the course of like a month and a half, and I was helping them find a home to purchase, I had, given them some praise just because I really looked up to them with some of their skill set with investment properties. But then I
Yep.
also, from more of an active service, when we got done, they had planned on renting this property after we closed on it. And as an active service, I went over and took some videos and additional pictures and drone shots for them to use to try and get their place rented. I also just did more of an active, I guess that would be an active service. I was gonna say, I thought I had the third one that I kind of did with them too. I guess maybe even quality time a little bit, just, kind of spending extra time, not ever feeling like you're in a rush, just trying to really enjoy each other's company, going out to lunch after, looking at a house, just having some of that quality time. And just, anyways, being able to then kind of see how they respond to those different love
Yeah.
languages that you've given out to them in different ways, and then being able to identify it that way, and then just kind of lean into that one a little bit more.
And then that's when it's like you got to see which love language lights up, and then you go for the referral.
Yeah, and then
You
it's
know,
I get a Google review. Yeah,
give me the Google review and then give me the referral. But on a serious note, it is that's why I think it's so important to understand who you are, what your love languages are, because when you do, you will then just kind of naturally be a little bit more observant with those around you, and so it allows you to kind of connect better, and you're just on heightened awareness. Where what you just said, I'm gonna compliment you on your investment portfolio and what kind of reaction did that get, or I'm going to go make a video for you. And so really being able to connect with people with where they're at.
and then the last point on this customer relationship specific application, just understanding on a more of a marketing perspective, how people always buy, at least most of the time I would think, buy based off of their emotion. A lot of people are very emotional when it comes to decision making, and
They are.
understanding these emotional needs that different people have can
Yeah.
also, not to be a snake or being, I don't want this to come off as being like kind of sleazy or using these five love languages as a way to influence people, but I do think that
Yeah.
understanding people's emotional needs and being able to apply whatever it is that you're trying to sell them with some of this stuff can really, be a beneficial. Again, it's a case by case scenario, but something to at least maybe have in the back of your mind if you guys are selling something.
Yeah, and how I would phrase that is, at the end of the day, you are a salesman. You're a real estate agent. I am a salesman. I'm a loan officer. Literally, my job title at the bank is sales manager. But I've always said that I don't think of myself as a salesperson. I'm not trying to sell you anything. What I am trying to do is I'm trying to educate and I'm trying to provide value. And I believe that if I do that, you will want to work with me. And so I think what you're getting at is that when you can understand some of these things and connect with someone, not that you're trying to manipulate their decision, but you're trying to provide the value to show what your value is and what your expertise is, to where you can then show what you're worth and encourage them to work with you.
Yeah, when you specific to providing value, I look at all five of these. I don't know, physical touch, that one I'd have to really think through. That's probably a tough one. It might get you in trouble. But the other four, you think about providing value. The words of affirmation, that's a way to provide value, especially if you're kind of combining that with maybe giving them some advice or sharing some knowledge that they might not currently have about whatever industry you're in. So definitely
Yeah.
providing value is a way you can do that with words of affirmation. Providing value with quality time, that's a huge one. Just being able to go the extra mile and just give them that time, that gift of time and that value of as much time as they need.
And when you do that, you're able to provide analysis. You're able to show your
Mm-hmm.
professionalism and your expertise. You might be in the car going from appointment to appointment or house to house, but it allows you to showcase who you are through the quality time.
And then acts of service, definitely a huge one. I think that's probably one of the biggest ones for providing value. So, again,
Yeah.
just as much, just additional value you can provide them without any expectation in return. That's a big one. Physical touch, we'll skip over that one. You guys get
Well,
creative, maybe.
this is what I think about physical touch. Like, you're a first time home buyer, and buying the home is a big deal, and you just give someone a handshake at the closing table, and you say, "We did it. You did it. You're a
Very true.
homeowner."
Very true. I was thinking too sexually on that one. You're right.
We're gonna have to go with the producers and edit that last 5 seconds out. Can you mark the?
And then the last but not least, receiving gifts. Obviously, that's an easy one for providing value. You could be, I think with this one, it's just all about if it is, trying to really make this as much of an impact as possible, just not just giving them some cookie cutter gift, but just trying to think of something that is maybe a little nugget that you got from them at some point. Maybe they
Yeah.
mentioned, I did this with my clients last week, actually, where their daughter was with them, a very young daughter. I think she was 2 or 3, and they were out visiting from out of state. And she had a little temporary tattoo of a dinosaur on her wrist. So then I let them know about how the state dinosaur is the Stegosaurus here in Colorado. It's actually, Colorado's one of the first places that they ever found Stegosaurus. So then they
Mm.
were coming back out to Denver a week later, and I just got a stuffed animal Stegosaurus that I gave the parents just to give their daughter when they saw her next. So just that'd be an example of like a gift, but going that little bit extra distance just to make it meaningful and just show them that you're
Yeah.
paying attention, you're just,
I
aware.
think those, what you're describing there, those are the best gifts where you can anticipate without the person telling you what they want or what they need. And if you can anticipate and get the gift and they're not even expecting it, like you can blow someone's socks off. What Grace did for me this year for Valentine's Day, I have a very deep relationship with my mom, even though she, in her legacy and her memory, even though she passed away back in 2021. And so my mom had these belt buckles that she had won from her horse shows and her rodeo time. And so she had these belt buckles, and she didn't, they were very personal to her. And my mom had never actually showed me these. And when we were going through these, all of her belongings, we found these 6 or 7 belt buckles in her drawer. Well, what Grace did, and so because of that, these belt buckles have significance to me and my family because they were so important to her. And so what Grace did is without asking, she went and got a belt buckle display made for Valentine's Day, knowing that these belt buckles were so important to me. And then she put them on display without me asking or even me bringing this up. And I hadn't even really thought about these belt buckles in 6 months. And I was just so touched. I was like, wow, this is one of the best gifts anyone has ever gotten me, just because it was so incredibly thoughtful. And she was able to anticipate something that was maybe, something that I didn't even know that I wanted or needed.
That's awesome. Good job, Grace. I like that. Very, very special.
Yeah.
So yeah, guys, just kind of closing out that section, just really think through and just try and go that extra distance with just not being generic, just really giving them that ability to see that, you do recognize something about it personal, something that just sets you apart and shows them that you really are paying attention.
Yeah. And what's that quote? People will forget what you say, but they will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're describing. When you do something, one of these love languages, it's really about how are you making the other person feel? Really, you're making them feel very valued and meaningful.
And, these can be done to some extent without being physically in the same presence as the other person. But, this is a skill that I think is dwindling, diminishing just because of how little and little people do spend. And I'm very much a victim or guilty of this. It's just, how little people are now spending in person, with actual relationships. And I think this is just one of these skills from a business perspective, again, that if you really are intentional about improving this and having this be something you're really strong at, you're going to set yourself apart from 99% of people, just because this is something that most people just aren't even thinking about anymore and just are pretty immature when it comes to, just these different cues for picking up on what people do or don't like, and, that dynamic.
Looking someone in the eye, making strong eye contact, shaking someone's hand, standing up straight, being able to clearly communicate verbally and over email or text what you're offering, what your needs are. Some of these skills that were commonplace back in the 1950s, I mean, they're almost non-existent now.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Look at young people.
Think about shaking hands, like how rare that is. Like even in like a somewhat not a formal setting, but like I've even found myself or other person just almost like doing the fist now. Like the fist is almost, I think, just with the germs and everything with COVID, it just like changed people how they interact. But I just hope it gets back to, I mean, that's another though, just an example of how you can set yourself apart. Just something like a firm handshake, how rare that is nowadays.
It's like, yeah, for me, a fist bump, I won't think twice if someone gives me a fist bump. And I'm sure that I've probably done that too. I don't normally do that, but if someone offers a fist bump, I'll accept and I'll do that. But I feel like when you shake someone's hand and you look them in the eye, that is such a more confident display of power and confidence and stature.
I'm just trying to think in my head the last time I've even, shaken somebody's hand, but also, had the opposite, just even a fist bump, just how rare that is. So be mindful of that and just take those opportunities and make the most of them.
Yeah.
So let's just close this one out. So we're going to give you guys just a couple actionable takeaways. We try and do this with every episode where we're focusing on content that hopefully can improve your guys' lives in some way. So first off, just that quiz that I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. I'll put the link in the show notes, but definitely check out 5lovelanguages.com and you can find it as well there. And just do that free quiz. That's probably all you need initially. But The next part of this is definitely identifying the top two languages, not just for yourself, but also the people that are closest around you. So if you have a partner, try and, motivate them or get them to do this with you. It's fun. It's a great way just to, again, just get deeper amongst each other. But not just them, also anybody else that's close to you. Maybe it's your boss, maybe it's some employees, maybe even
Even
your
your kids,
kids.
right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you
Even your
if you
kids.
I have two kids and their love languages are very different.
Mm-hmm.
It's ironic because I spend a lot of time with my daughter, but one-on-one time, quality time is really a love language of my son. And maybe it is my daughter too, but he just thrives with that, where when we have the one-on-one time together, he just soaks that up and absolutely loves it. And it does wonders for our relationship. And I think that's another thing that you're really hitting the head on today is that when you identify with someone's love language, it really just strengthens the relationship, doesn't it?
All right. Well, let's close this one out, Ben.
All right. Well, today we covered the five love languages and how they transformed our relationships and how you can use it in business and leadership to create better connections. And next week, we're diving into something that can literally rewire your brain for success, the RAS, or the Reticular Activating System. Make sure that you log on next week and join us because you're not going to want to miss that. And this is our final note here for today's episode. We have a goal of getting to 100,000 subscribers. So if this episode brought you value, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a review. It would mean a lot to us. And we appreciate you for listening. We appreciate you for your comments, for your questions, for your engagement. We love you guys. We're doing it for you. We're doing it for our fans. And guess what? We are growing along the way because we are pursuing progress.
We love you guys. If we could give all five love languages to you right now to say thank you, we would. But we're going to leave it with just words of affirmation tonight. Love you guys. Keep following us. Excited for that all new episode next week, all about the reticular activating system. And until then, we'll see you guys later.
We love you guys. We'll see you next week.